I'm sharing my 5 favorite custom functions for the Canon R6 to help you get more out of your camera. After using the Canon R6 professionally for more than a year, I wanted to share some of my favorite custom functions that helps me take better photos. And hopefully they will help you make better photos as well. Many of my tips will work for most modern Canon cameras, so even if you don't own a Canon R6 yet, I hope it will be something in here for you as well. First, we're actually going to fix something that I don't even understand why Canon isn't including in the factory settings. That's something that's called Direct AF Point Selector. What it does is that we will program the thumb wheel control, the joystick, to be able to actually move the focus point selector. That way we don't have to flip the screen and keep touching the screen because it's slow, as well as you can accidentally change other settings. Also, if you are doing any sort of active photography like a wedding or an event or doing sports, you know that you often spend your time not with your camera like this, but like this. And then every time you need to sort of shift focus, you need to take your camera down, click on your screen to set the focus, take your camera up to your face. You're gonna miss out on a lot of photography sort of situations. We're gonna fix that to reprogram the Direct AF Point Selector to the thumb wheel. And to do that, we need to go into the menu. Scroll to the right, menu number 6, and on tab 3, you will find on line 3 Customize buttons. Then we scroll all the way down until you have activated the thumb joystick. You can see that on the highlighted picture on the left. Click Set, scroll to the right, activate Direct AF Point Selector, click Set again, and that is how simple you will change the factory setting to activate Direct AF Selector to the thumb joystick. My second favorite custom functions on the Canon R6 is something that I think most of you already know if you have watched some of my previous videos. It's the dual back button autofocus. I think it's one of those settings that once you sort of figure out why it's so versatile and powerful, you ask yourself, why haven't I used this earlier? In my case, it was very simple. Before the Canon R6, I had the Canon M50. The M50 doesn't have the possibility to program a dual back button autofocus, at least not to my knowledge. So when I upgraded to the Canon R6, this was one of the first things I actually changed due to a YouTube tutorial. And I will never use a camera without this setting. So what is the dual back button autofocus? What we are going to do is we're going to take away the factory settings of focus and taking pictures and move the autofocus selector to a back button, hence the name back button autofocus. But we're not going to stop there because we still have the problem, I would call it, when we need to shift between photographing people or objects, or if we are photographing people but we want to manually focus with autofocus, so manually focus on a subject. So it could be they are walking into frame, maybe you want to put the people out of focus because you are focusing on like a wedding ring and then you have the couple out of focus. The dual back button autofocus, we actually gonna split autofocus from the factory settings, the index finger, the top button, to have a spot focus on one button and eye tracking on a second button. That way we can always, while photographing like this and in the combination with the AF selector that we just learned about, I can continuously shift my autofocus point selector as well as alternating between spot focus and eye tracking focus. And that's just gonna level up your Canon camera to the next level. Dual back button autofocus is a combination of customized buttons. We are going into the customized buttons, and on the first line, we're gonna switch the trigger to the most right option. Then scrolling down until you have AF on selected and select metering and AF start. Then on the star menu, scroll until you have eye detection AF selected. And it's just that simple to actually activate dual back button autofocus. And that's the register shooting function recall or the recall shooting function. And it's an amazing feature. So basically what we can do is that we can have like a preset that the camera can recall in shutter speed as well as aperture, ISO, focus point. There are a lot of settings that we can actually have like a default setting, a preset. And we're gonna program that into a custom button. So let's say I am sort of doing really shallow depth of field photos for an event. I'm sort of running around and I'm at, this is an 85 1.4. So maybe I'm at f1.4 and I'm sort of doing really shallow depth of field photography. And I sort of switch my camera and suddenly I see the main person of the event, the sponsor, maybe the CEO. And I actually had this happening at this event. So I saw this CEO and he's sort of, not a shy person, but he keeps sort of his distance. And he was standing next to one of his sort of first in line as well as his wife. And they were positioned not on a perfect line because people never are on a perfect line unless you are directing them. So I knew directly and instinctively that 1.4 I would get one of the three main characters in focus. But I had the recall shooting function programmed. So instead of trying to shift my sort of settings, and I would have lost that opportunity of taking a really important photo for that event, I just kept my recall settings pressed, which defaults in my case to f2.8, 1/200th of a second on auto, ISO and eye tracking. So when I was sweeping, I saw them press the button for the recall function. My camera defaulted to the settings. I took 5-6 pictures and 3 of them were perfect. That's a moment lost without the recall function. It's extremely powerful. So, and it's dead simple to set. The only thing is you need to keep the button pressed for this, for the entire. So with your thumb occupied for shifting the AF selector, and we have the thumb pressed for either spot focus or the thumb pressed for dual back button autofocus, it can't be a button that we use for the thumb. This button on the R6, and if you didn't know what it is, it's the preview of the depth of field. So for example, if you're on f4 and you sort of keep your camera like this, everything is still in focus because it's based on the viewfinder. But if you keep this button pressed, you will have a preview of the depth of field. For studio work, I might see this could actually be in common handy, but doing event photography, street photography, not so much. So we're gonna reprogram this button, because that way you can either, if you have really big hands as I do, I can reach this with my pinky, or if you take the camera, as I often do when I shoot, I keep it two-handed because it's more steady like this, easier, and I can also use the ring and I can shift back and forth with my thumb from manual to autofocus. I can also reach this button with my left hand. From now on, because I haven't used it for that many events, I always keep this finger on the recall. I have my thumb on the RF adapter ring, as well as I can shift the thumb to put my lens in manual if I need it. That way I have more or less access to all the custom features and all the automatic features of the R6 without ever taking the camera down from my face. So you start to see why these are my favorite custom functions. When you start to combine them, you sort of graduate from being a photographer to being a multifaceted machine of a professional, and that's something that I think you would like. I love it, and hopefully you will love it as well. So how do we do it? It's back into the menu, and it's back into programming a custom button for this. So going into the menu, we need to scroll quite far down. So scroll until you see the DOF preview button, and there you click set. And then we need to scroll quite a bit because it's almost at the end of the list. So just keep scrolling until you find an icon that looks like a camera with 2 arrows. But don't press set, press the info button. That will open up the default setting of your register recall shooting functions. Using the thumb dial, we can jump to the right part of the lists, and here we can set the specific shutter speed, aperture. You can even change metering mode, exposure, white balance, and so on. It is also important to notice that you can actually uncheck some of this, and that's actually very smart. So for example, if you never want to recall your aperture but your shutter speed, then you can just uncheck the box in front of the settings you want to exclude from the recall setting function. Super powerful, super helpful, and just a setting I love so much. I'm going to show you an aspect of custom menu that I think you will find very helpful and important. So, why do we want custom menu? I would say if you are starting to find yourself going into the menu, resetting your camera on a regular basis, especially when you are using it. So when you are in the field and you don't have time to filter through 7 different menus and tabs and subsettings and so on, we're gonna save the most important settings that we need to change on a regular basis and put them into our custom menu, the same menu. So that way you can reach them from one specific location, and that's much faster. And as I have programmed, and hopefully you have programmed now as well, the AF function, as well as the dual back button autofocus, as well as the recall function, we don't particularly need to go into the menu to change anything. So I usually leave my camera on the custom menu. That way, when I start menu, I'm at the right place. And that's very helpful when doing sort of live events, for example. So, going into the camera to do the custom menus. So we're gonna jump to the furthest right menu, and then on tab 3, we have Add My Menu tab. That will create a custom menu. So just click OK, and then you have the option to configure. Select the items you want to register, and items are options that you want to be included in your custom menu. So just let's take picture style as an example, press OK. I'm gonna take interval timer. I'm gonna register that to my menu, and just by going over like this, we can add items to our custom menu. Think about items as all the options you want at the fingertip of one custom menu. Lastly, my 5th favorite custom function for the Canon R6 is also named the custom shooting mode. So custom, that's kind of funny. But it's extremely versatile, especially when you combine it with the custom settings we have just gone over. What we can do is that we can take a preset, like my street photography settings or my event photography settings. And we can program all of those sort of custom functions and settings into one location on the dial. That way I can shift from C1, a preset, to C2, another preset, but I can still have different custom functions on those. And that's why it's my 5th favorite custom function, because it gives me more versatility at the tip of just a dial instead of constantly going into the camera menu to sort of pick settings. It's about speed and efficiency. And with that, higher speed, higher efficiency comes higher accuracy. And what I mean with that is you're gonna end up with more keepers. And I think that's the game of becoming a better and better photographer, is to be able to get more and more keepers of the photos we take. And that's where the custom functions come in. But I'm gonna share with you quickly where you can find it and how you can use it. And if you want a more in detailed video, stay tuned for next week. So we're going back one step to menu number 5, and on tab 5 you have custom shooting mode. At the very top you have register settings, and then you just scroll into the custom shooting mode C1, 2 or 3 you want to register your current settings on and press OK. All the settings you currently had in your camera will now be saved to that specific C1, 2 or 3. There is also a setting where you can go to auto update set. What that means is if you are on C1 and you make changes to your settings, that will automatically be saved to that specific shooting mode. I typically don't use automatic updates because I want the most control. And that's custom shooting mode in short. I really hope you got something out of the 5 favorite custom functions, and I would really love to hear if you have any other functions you use for your Canon R6. So please share in the comments below so we can help each other become better Canon R6 users. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really helps out the channel. And if you haven't already, please also consider subscribing. I hope to see you in any of these videos. Otherwise, hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Stay creative, have fun, see you, bye bye.